Planning Commission for the Village of Milwaukee. As please rise to the allegiance followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Grabowski.
Here.
Commissioner Hawk. Here. Mr. Liber. Mr. Belt.
Here.
Mr. Scholastic. Here. And President Knudsen.
Here. Public hearings, we have none. Citizen comments, this is an opportunity for citizens to share their opinions with commission members on any topic they choose or review of Wisconsin open meeting laws. The commission is not able to answer questions or respond to your comments. All comments should be directed to the commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked, please use the podium and speak their name and address. Is there anybody here that has a public comment? Okay. Approval of item 4, approval of the regular planning commission meeting April 11th, 2024. I hope everyone's had a chance to read over them. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections as to the way they are presented this evening? And if not, I'll look for a motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve, Grabowski.
Second, Teresa.
We have a motion and a second discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are hereby adopted. Item 5, old business. Review, discussion, and possible action, recommendation of village board to impose certain design specification regulations pertaining to freestanding ground signs in the B2 downtown district. This matter is village initiated. Mary, did you want to just respond?
Sure. Last month, the planning commission talked about this just on a high level, question of whether you want to look at the signs just in the B2 downtown business district and talk about regulating the internally lit type signs and maybe more specifically internally lit through a plastic or Lexan type base. And we talked about a couple of other things like the architectural style, materials, and colors, and could those be more consistent with the specific buildings they are attendant to, that kind of thing. And you asked that I would come back this month with a draft that kind of incorporates those changes into the code language for the B2 district. So I've done that. And I kept in the report for your reference the section of chapter 70, which is our sign code. I kept in there the purpose statement of the chapter because I just wanted you to have an opportunity to reread that and remind yourself what we say about the purpose of sign regulations to begin with, right? Protect the village from, distractions and obstructions from signs. Want things to be harmonious, aesthetically pleasing, things of that nature. But so then, more specifically with respect to how to further regulate internally lit signs, what I had suggested by this report is we would take the language you see on the screen and create 2 subcategories to paragraph 2 in 70.115. Paragraph 2 addresses freestanding ground signs in all of the village's non-residential districts, basically, the B1 through the B5, the IPS, and the P1 district. So this change would suggest that we address those in general in all of those districts as to the number of signs that are permitted and the location where those signs are permitted. But then we would go down and create a subsection number 2 that would talk about just the freestanding signs in the B2 district, and it would say that freestanding signs can't exceed 40 square feet. That's already been the provision, but now we're going to park it in this box under that 70.115. And we're going to go on to say that the materials, colors, and architectural design and style of freestanding ground signs in the downtown district must match or complement the materials, colors, and architectural style of the principal building on that site. If there's any question as to whether a sign matches or complements the principal building, the proposed sign plan and the permit application would be pushed up to the Planning Commission from staff for your review, consideration, and final action on the application. Planning Commission can attach any conditions it deems necessary to an approval that it might grant, to the extent you've determined that those conditions would directly relate to improving the extent of matching or complementing the principal building, okay? Then in this next paragraph, we would say that any freestanding ground sign in the B2 downtown district proposed to be internally illuminated would be subject to review and approval by the Planning Commission, period. The Planning Commission is going to consider and set things like the intensity, the temperature, the intermittence, and the permitted hours of illumination for an internally lit sign in the B2 district. And then we go on to say, except in the case, actually these two paragraphs should have been in reverse order. This paragraph I, CI, should be first, and then any freestanding signs should be second. So I apologize for that. But it should say, except in the case of existing permitted gas stations in service on or before June 1st, 2024, and continuously operating since that time, freestanding ground signs in the downtown business district may not be permitted to use internal illumination passed through plastic or Lexan. In the case of modifications to or replacements of an existing freestanding ground sign serving that kind of gas station, at their sole discretion, the Planning Commission can permit modifications or replacement to those signs continuing to use the internally lit process. And so that kind of captures the changes that I felt I was hearing the commission ask for at last month's meeting. The idea of the gas stations, I kind of stuck it in there, not knowing whether you feel strongly about that or not. It's not a must. It's not necessarily a best practice, but you do have these two stations down on the far end, close to Highway 16. They do currently rely on internal illumination, passed through plastic and Lexan. They are also changeable copy signs, which already automatically triggers a Planning Commission review and approval. But so if you want to continue to allow them to have that type of internally lit sign, because of the unique nature of gas stations and what we're, locally accustomed to seeing for signage at a gas station, that would be the way to do it. If you feel like over time, they should really just come into step with the prohibition entirely in the B2 district on internally lit signs, then you would take out that second paragraph, okay? So that's it. I'll turn it over to the commission.
Are there any questions or comments?
Start if someone else says anything. This looks good to start with. I really appreciate this. What about mounted signs, building mounted signs?
Those are regulated in the code.
Okay.
And we do permit internally lit signs on the walls.
Right. I would probably be up for seeing that added in the B2 and regulations on backlit Lexan signs also added in the B2. I don't know about anyone else. That'd be my opinion. If we're going to do it for freestanding signs, we should also include building mounted signs as well. Would be my thought on that. I mean, everything that's there existing, obviously, I would never want to change anything. I'd let anything that's existing grandfathered in, but you go downtown and you get all these nice craft signs, and then there's the Maytag laundry, which is great that's there, but I think it stands out. It's out of place, mounted
I
on
think
this.
we have too much of it.
No, we don't. It's
Presently.
very limited, but just, looking forward.
Yeah.
In the words of Craig Roberts, it's not about what's today, it's what's coming.
Sam?
Yeah, I just had a question for the planner. So if we were to recommend this, it goes forward, and it would go into ordinance for the village board to vote on eventually. My understanding is, so any signs, though, that existed before we passed this obviously would be grandfathered in, correct?
Yeah, the code does specifically talk about existing signs, and what it says is that if they're damaged or destroyed to beyond 50% of their value, this is what our code says, that they cannot be repaired or replaced without coming into full compliance with the new regulations, with the current regulations. And then it also goes on to say that in the event that there is a modification that has to come to the planning commission to either the lot, the site plan, or the building or use on a property, for any reason, site plan approval, conditional use permit, something like that, that the planning commission may require that the signs on that property be brought into compliance with current regs at that time.
Okay, so yeah, you read my mind. So my question was, yeah, you know, if there was like an act of God or a car crashed into an existing sign that didn't match this, that was grandfathered in. So it sounds like if it's 50% or more, that they would then have to come into compliance. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
But on my way home last time, like the Beach House Bistro is backlit, the bank is backlit. I mean, so I don't think those look bad. So I guess my question is, are they regulated with a temperature of light and the amount of time they can be on, like you're proposing for the ground signs?
Is Beach House back?
We do have illumination, hours of
Yeah.
illumination. These letters, Artisan,
Are they lit too?
are backlit.
And the bank on the corner, and then I just happened to notice them as we were driving home, and I was like, well, we do have
Okay.
quite a few that are lit that I don't think look bad.
No, I was mistaken in that.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes I feel like it's hard to, especially with a timer, you know, some of those signs can't really be on a
Well,
timer.
the beach house just has can lights above it.
It's
Oh, okay,
yeah.
It's shadowed down.
and then the bank on the corner is definitely.
Yep, the bank definitely is backlit.
And then
This
that
one
blue
is
sign right
black, Backlit here.
I do believe is lit. So anyway, I was just wondering, I mean, if those, do those follow a certain color
These are
temperature
backlit.
and?
Yeah, yes, so we do have a section in the sign code that addresses the hours, permitted hours of illumination for signs in all businesses.
Okay, so do those shut off at night? I actually have no idea.
I
Anybody?
can't tell you that I know for sure.
I don't know.
The hour,
Just wanna make
I will
sure.
say I've been past them, like at late night hours, but I was never.
Looking.
I could never remember the time, my capacity at those times I'd go past there would never.
Because you're walking. by.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so maybe, I mean, yeah, I guess with that being said, like those are channel letter signs, and those are, I think those are good looking signs. So maybe we leave off the. I rescind my opinions earlier about about the building mounted if we feel we're pretty comfortable with that regulations on that now.
So is this, going a little more depth, is this written in a way that those backlit Lexon signs are prohibited 100%, or they'd have to come to us for approval? I guess I didn't quite get.
They have to come to you for approval.
Okay.
Period. All backlits,
Okay.
freestanding signs in the
Okay, okay.
downtown would have to come to the
Okay.
commission.
But it says shall not be permitted to be used, internal, your little I would say that means it can't even go to the commission. It says they're not permitted. So I felt like I and C kind of contradicted each other, but now that I know they're reversed, but I would read it as they're not allowed at all, whether they come to us or not.
You know, you're correct, and that's why those paragraphs are upside down.
Right, okay. So, I mean, I would always like them to be able to come here for a variance if, you know, needed.
Yes. So it starts by talking about the gas stations being an exception, but then going on to say all other signs, all other freestanding signs in the downtown prohibited from internal illumination.
Yeah. Like you said, there are some, I mean, I don't think like North Shore is terrible. It's backlit and I don't think it's terrible. So yeah, there are some decent ones, but yeah, having a little bit more control might not be a bad thing.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Would someone like to make a motion to either recommend to the village board to put this in or not to?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board the modifications to the code with the change as, or the typo correction of reversing the paragraphs as suggested by Planner Sensky.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Item 6, under new business A, review, discussion, and consultative feedback to applicant property owner Glen at Pewaukee Lake LLC, NCO John Whalen and Joe Orendorf to build a home on Outlot 2, the Glen of Pewaukee Lake subdivision. This 5,651 square foot, 0.13 acres outlot is zoned R single family residential district with residential infill redevelopment R&R overlay district. Mary, I think you need to go into this one.
Sure. So this little parcel was not a parcel unto itself at the time that the transaction was done to create what is now the Glen at Pewaukee Lake plat. It was part of a larger parcel that was owned by the Queen of Apostles, and Queen of Apostles owned like 5 or 6 separate pieces over there that had to be accumulated. So this little parcel wasn't a 0.13 acre lot. It was part of, I think it was maybe a 2 acre lot that was one of the many. But its layout was such that there was really no way within the platting of new lots in the Glen at Pewaukee Lake that it could be incorporated and meet the standards of the minimum 7,000 square foot, rock bottom in the infill redevelopment overlay district. And it would have pulled them down substantially if they had tried to figure it in as an averaging and added a little land on the back of it from these other lots. So they kept ownership of it instead of making it an outlot that was transferred in ownership to the Association of the Glen at Pewaukee Lake. They kept ownership and are now looking at what are the best opportunities for dispensing with the land. What might be the most viable way, to make this useful. And what they've proposed in this case is that the village might consider allowing them to actually create that lot as a buildable parcel unto itself. And in the report, you'll see that the statutes say that an outlot's not a buildable parcel. So we would have to go through some paperwork to create, this buildable lot. But to do that, the village would first have to be agreeable to amending something within the zoning code in the residential infill overlay specifically. And it would have to be very narrowly drafted to either allow this 5,600 square foot lot to be the rock bottom size in that district and find some unique characteristics about this that allow it to happen, so that you don't create that permission throughout the entirety of that overlay area. You may or may not, be interested in going that route. I put into my report the reference to what the Waukesha County has said about trying to establish affordable housing in the county, trying to make these things attainable, these new home construction projects attainable. They've shown you a home and a floor plan that nearly fits, but not quite, within the confines of the setback and the offset requirements of the district. It's a little bit tight side to side to make that happen with an attached garage, and an attached garage is required under our code in the R5 district. So the other thing that the village attorney pointed out as he reviewed this is a statutory requirement that lots cannot be in the state, they cannot be less than 6,000 square feet unless the local government has specifically adopted a permission for lots less than 6,000 square feet. So there's something, I think there's something to be learned from that. There's a reason they picked that number. And I'm sure it has to do with, you know, how able are you to facilitate an actual home of livable size on a lot less than that. The other thing I guess I would point out is that the lot sizes within the confines of this plat were averaged, and as I recall, you get to combine all of your lots and then figure out what your average minimum lot size is, and you have to meet a threshold there. We would have to back build this 5,000 square foot lot into that calculation and find out whether you still meet the minimum requirement for the district when the plat was approved. So that would have to be addressed very carefully. So that is the concept that's afoot, and it would take some tweaking to your code. It goes to to an issue that's bigger than my ability to guide you on, and that is, the desire to develop affordable housing in the community, even on the smallest scale, one lot, one house. Joe Orendorf is here tonight for the project. We want to hear from him, but I'll turn it over to the commission.
Are there any questions from the board at this time?
Yes. I have many, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's just start. What is like the 10-foot-ish offset off the back of the sidewalk that is shown on the aerial? It's only on that lot is, because you don't have it included in the square footage, so what is that?
Let me just,
I think that'd be the right-of-way dedication.
Yeah,
from-
Well, the other ones don't seem to have it, but this one does?
Yeah.
Okay, were the outlots included in the original average? Because sometimes outlots aren't included, so were they included in the original calculation? Because there's multiple outlots there.
no, only the buildable lots are combined and the average taken. So the clubhouse parcel and the other outlots are not.
But since this isn't part of the Glen, it would be just a freestanding, why would it be averaged into the Glens?
It actually is, it is inside the confines of the Glen plat.
Okay,
It's identified there as an outlot. It's just owned by an individual, not by
okay,
the association.
okay. Those were my questions right now.
Are there any others? Yes, Sam.
If the village goes ahead with this change to allow for this, does this set any sort of precedent going forward? So this would only apply to this infill redevelopment overlay, is that correct? I'm just wondering if this would set a precedent if someone came in and wanted to redevelop and build a bunch of, tiny homes and,
So, yes, I think to answer your question, that's certainly a possibility, which is why when Mary started, she said it would have to be carefully drafted. We'd have to look at this and come up with, what the unique circumstances that are present here that would justify that, and draft it in a way that those circumstances would be what would be necessary to approve this anywhere else. So that won't be easily done. Is it possible? I suspect it is. But yes, I think we'd be very concerned that, because in essence, that would remove your minimum 7,000 square foot out the window by a substantial amount. So you definitely want to make sure that you're not really cutting the legs out underneath of what you already have.
yeah, we're talking about 1,300 plus square
Right.
feet. I mean, that's significant.
Yes.
All right, I think that's all I had at this time.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one more, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
So if I look at the plat outlot number 5 in the Glen, because you just said outlots couldn't be built on, but that's the clubhouse. So is that a variance?
Home size is similar to.
So variances would apply to like the setbacks and things of that nature, but under the state statute that Mary alluded to, you have to have it in your subdivision code what your lot size requirements are.
And because of that, I don't believe that a variance for the lot size would be possible. It would be for the setback to get closer to the lot line to, be able to put the 10 pounds of sand in the 5-pound bag. But aside from that, I don't believe a variance for the square footage would be possible based on the statutory language. It doesn't directly prohibit it, but it begs the question of why that requirement would be there if it were modifiable otherwise.
Okay, and then my question I asked, I'm sorry, while you were talking, is if outlots aren't supposed to be built on, outlot 5 in the Glen has our clubhouse on it, so you just, I think when you started, you said outlots couldn't have a building on it. So did they come and get permission for that?
As a residence, it cannot be.
Residence,
Used for
okay.
sale as a residence
Got it.
is what I've meant.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have the builder here. Would the commission like to hear from the builder? Would you be okay with him?
Sure. Yeah. If you'd like to make a comment.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. One other piece I wanted to point.
Please, John, state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe Orndorff with Cornerstone Development.
John.
At the very front, if you could look at the screen, there's actually another piece of property. And Mary, I'm not sure if that factored into any of your information. That's, I think it's, when I did the math, it was, I think it's 10 feet deep. You can see it right along Quinlan Drive there.
Right here,
Yes.
yeah.
And I don't think that's factored in. And actually, quite frankly, I don't think we even own that. We didn't purchase it. I think it's a surveying issue from years ago.
It may be a gap.
And it's tied in with Queen of Apostles, from what I could figure out from the CSM that was done. So we would have to work that out and get a quick claim. It would add a little bit more square footage to that lot. But then when I looked at it, this outlot number 2, I believe it's called, is very similar to the other lots 1, 2, 3 right next to them. It's 56 feet across the front, or 55 and a half, and it's the same relative depth. So it was very similar to those other lots. So it seemed to make sense that this would fit in and be loaded off of Quinlan. So there's the site aspect of it, the property, and then the other part of this was also of the home and what would work for the home. And we can adjust the home, the garage and such, to meet any setbacks that would be put on this property for us. So
The house,
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead.
the house size that you're proposing, how does that, because obviously you've done your homework, how does that compare to the lots 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 that are actually on Quinlan and on Wisconsin? Are the sizes?
in terms of the size, I think they're very, very similar, based upon just, I didn't look up square footage either, but if you look at the front and then the depth on the of the lot, those dimensions were very similar to what, once we combined everything, ours would be. Because right now, I don't think we can do anything without obtaining that other piece.
True, good point. Because I'm gonna say I don't like seeing the lot empty. I like the idea of putting something there. I do realize the issue it brings to the table and what we've gone through with this, this whole area. I wouldn't want it to be any larger than the other homes in the area so that it sticks out. Obviously, lot 1, on Quinlan, that front to the entrance of the Glens, that's a completely different story, especially on 3 sides as well. My other question would be, what if anything would or ever could be done? And so if we're considering anything about lot 22, that's an outlot that doesn't have anything on it either?
Lot 22,
Did
Mary,
we
maybe you
build
can
on
help me
that?
on the logistics of this and all, but we did build on.
Oh, we did build a
Yes,
house. Thank
because
you.
lot 22 was part of the plat for the Glen at Pewaukee Lake, but it's not part of the homeowners association.
I apologize.
Yep.
1 and 22 are the ones that are not
Correct.
part of the home.
Correct.
Yes, my apologies. So me personally, I would love to see something there. I don't want it to be any bigger than what's already in that area, but I know the challenges that this brings us. And is there, I would have to refer to Mark, if there's any if, ands, or buts that could be considered for this one location, if we have to dig deeper into state statutes or something for something that's just a completely one-off.
So I guess the better way to maybe to frame it is to allow for any adjustment to that minimum that you have of square footage for these lots. I guess, first of all, you'd have to set another floor maybe, and then say that you would only allow going down to that floor, for example, if there are, adjacent properties of the same dimension or substantially the same dimension, something along those lines. But I think we would have to give some thought to it. I think we were just talking about that gap there, because in order to make these lots consistent, or this lot consistent with the others, that piece of right-of-way looks like it would have to be addressed, and we would need to find out why that's there. Just looking at the utility overlay, it doesn't look like there's something that's running through there, but we'd have to check on that to verify, maybe why that was done, because otherwise, we might be creating more of a problem. So I guess the bottom line would be is that the commission is considering this, is we would need to look into those issues further and see if we could come up with a mechanism to allow for this kind of thing to occur. So in a way that doesn't open the door, as you mentioned earlier, to this becoming the new minimum lot size for the village.
Yeah, that seems like that could be all the difference in the world for making this
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
forward here.
Right.
So do we need to, we don't need to make any action on this, right? It's just
No,
a
I mean, I think
consultation.
if this is here for consultation right now, I think that if we have the direction, though, that the commission is inclined for us to explore options to make this happen, then we would need to do that and then come back at your next meeting with what we come up with.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Outlot 2 at some point was offered to the current Quinlan and Wisconsin Avenue Lot 3, 5, and 6 for purchase, correct?
No idea.
I do not believe we had any substantive discussions
With the residents?
with correct.
This was part of what, as was alluded to earlier, that was that the Queen of Apostles owned. And so when we did that transaction,
Right.
we were just incorporating all the lands, they owned in the purchase that the village engaged in. So it was a rather unique shaped piece of property, as you know, and so it had some of these idiosyncrasies that we're now dealing with.
Can I ask one other question?
Yes.
There's no way to pull this out of that district, the overlay district, is there? Where you could actually have it similar to the other properties that are on that street?
Not unless you wanted to go into a replat, and as Mary said, that messes with the issues of your lot size and all. Well, maybe it wouldn't, I guess, if you took it out, but you'd have to do a replat, which is its own set of circumstances, and the existing owners would have to consent to that, and you've created your own, another can of worms to deal with there. So I think that trying to go the route of revising the subdivision code would be, if you want to do this, that's probably the way that would make the most sense to accomplish it.
In other words, an if not for type situation, this could be done in this particular,
Yeah, I mean, it like I said, we're going to have to look more closely at it, and it would seem to me that if in fact we don't find a reason for that right-of-way piece there, that having that extend so it's similar to the right-of-way locations for the lots on either side would be the first step, and then the second step would be so then that lot then becomes, in terms of depth, the equivalent of those to the north of it. That would have to happen, it seems to me, and then you would, the way the statute reads, or the way that you usually handle these, is outlots are restricted from residential development, and usually there's some kind of a restriction by way of some other use that's being made of those lands that has to be released. And I'm not aware of there being such a restriction on the plat for outlot number 2, but we'd have to check that. So that may require a release by the board, and then obviously the revision to the code, which would be, for the commission to review as well as the village board.
So are we all on, I guess, board of doing something to change it so this is a buildable lot?
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with Mark that, number one, I think 5,600 or whatever seems super small. So I think getting over that 6,000 range by grabbing that, trying to find out what's up with that front edge in, if you can acquire that, I'd be way more comfortable with moving the floor of square footage to allow that to be buildable. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
No, I agree with you. I feel that because it would be the same size as an adjoining property,
Yeah.
you're not really opening yourself up. It's not like someone's gonna put this in the middle of a 2-acre per family house, then we would say no to that. But if you could write in there that if it's similar to adjacent properties, then I think we're fairly safe.
Yeah, adjacent existing properties,
yeah.
right?
Same. And I would be more in favor too of reconfiguring the house to increase the side setbacks, even if it's at the cost of the front and rear setbacks. Would be my opinion on it, just because how tight it is to some of those neighboring properties, as shown here. But
Yeah, when folks were sold those, I guess, I don't know, are the lots that are in the HOA that are adjacent, are those built, and I haven't driven on Quinlan in a while.
There is a home on site number 4.
Okay.
So, and then we start at 2, so it's 2, 3, so it's a third lot in. There is a home there.
It looks like you guys still own lots 2 and 3 on the map up.
Correct. 2, 3, 4, 5.
And Mary, can you walk me through, remind me again, the setbacks are based on 75-foot wide properties, is that it? And then it scales down, like the side
Setback
setbacks,
is-
like side setbacks.
Side yards, yeah. Side yards in this redevelopment overlay district.
Okay.
I believe they are 0 feet on one side if it's a common
total of
wall.
10, and we balanced it to 5 and 5 on almost every site, and some are more than that.
What about the rest of the village? So say what's the,
R5 single family, I
Yeah.
think that's a 10-foot side yard offset
10
on
foot.
both sides.
but that's for a minimum 75-foot
I
lot?
think it's 75-foot, 10,500 square foot minimum.
Okay, so but then don't we scale down from that then? So if you have a
We do have
50-foot.
a factoring ratio.
Yeah,
Right.
for legal, for lots of record prior to 1999, there is a factoring in to allow those to still be buildable lots.
Right.
But for a legal conforming 10,500 square foot R5 single family, it has to meet all setbacks.
And on the drawing on the garages on the north, but in the picture rendering the garages on the south, you'll fix that?
Yeah, we'll work with garage placement and even the home itself,
Okay,
because we'd have to come back for all that, I'm assuming. And then also get it to work within setbacks. It's more just conceptually, can we do something with this at this point? So we will work with staff, is that correct, to try and work through this?
Staff has to do some research to begin with, so it's not as much as what you can do at this point, that we just need to do some research.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay,
Everybody has continuous, has to sign off on that.
on to the next item as soon as I get to it.
Right, these people.
Review and discussion and possible action on proposed building and site plan modification at 115 West Wisconsin Avenue. This 1.17 acre B2 downtown business zone property is owned by Joseph Garage Development LLC. Mary?
Right. So, 2 months ago, I think, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit for the Daily Dose to locate in this building at 115 West Wisconsin Avenue. And as a condition of that, the applicant was required to come back with plans to staff for location of the dumpster and a solution to screening it. And they also had to come back with any other plans with respect to building code items that might be required of them. One of those is a handicapped ramp along the backside of the building to access the rear door into the building. And then the applicant also, of his own volition, wants to make a number of changes to the exterior of the building itself with respect to materials and colors. So that's what is presented to you tonight. And I have to just scroll down here. Things are moving a little slow for some reason. Get to that report. So I've reviewed, for instance, the dumpster location plan. It's proposed to sit on the lot line between this lot and the one directly north, which is owned by this same applicant. He doesn't have, he could give himself cross-access easements to allow the dumpster to be there, but there's an offset requirement of 10 feet there for the dumpster, and they would have to provide that offsetting space on the lot to the north, and they're not able to do that because there's an accessory garage sitting back there that they're not going to be taking down. The better solution is for the applicant to combine these two lots, which is already in his game plan. And he has submitted a certified survey map that will come up at next month's meeting. But until then, we can't approve a dumpster that sits on a lot line. But you could make a conditional action in that respect. One of the things I pointed out in my report, moving on then to the question about the exterior building materials changes. So there is a section in the code for the B2 downtown district that talks about primary, permitted primary building materials. And what it says is that, I apologize, the screens are just not moving tonight. The acceptable primary materials, except for the windows, of course, have to be at least 70% primary materials of brick, native stone, such as limestone, fieldstone, Landon stone, cedar siding, or cement resin siding to be the primary materials. And then the secondary materials can be a variety of other things. I wanted to point that out. So we do not have a calculation of the composition of the building materials. So we'll want to be provided one to ensure that this building is compliant in that respect.
Not looking to meet that.
Joe, maybe just hang on for a second. Let her finish.
It didn't appear to me that you were, and I thought that might be why I would ask you to provide that composition or that calculation for us. The balance of the plan I really kind of addressed in my recommended conditions if you are inclined toward an approval of the changes that are being proposed. And what I've done here is try to configure a way for you to grant an approval that would contain enough conditions to get them through to next month's meeting and still pursue some of the work in the interim. First of all, with respect to the proposed new raised concrete and the related railings at the front street side of the project. So I think that's a nice idea to extend that raised concrete area all the way out to the ends of the building and put the railings in there so that the Daily Dose can put their tables up on that and their chairs up on there. The only point I wanted to make is that we should require that they pull that back out of the right-of-way. The map that you gave us, the site plan that you gave us, shows that concrete and railing extending just slightly over the right-of-way line into the village's right-of-way sidewalk area. So either that, or they're going to have to get a permissive use and hold harmless type agreement approved by the village board to encroach on the right-of-way, that small bit that the site plan identifies. And I can show that to you if you need to dial down on that when we get into discussion. The second condition I had suggested is that the dumpster enclosure structure can't be constructed until they've secured the final approval and recorded a certified survey map combining the two lots, so that the violation of setting the dumpster on the lot line without an offset that meets the code is resolved. And the thing I pointed out in this condition number 2 is that the certified survey map is going to trigger the process for approval being through conditional use grant. And the reason for that is our code says if you are going to be mixing multiple principal uses on one lot in the B2 district, it becomes a conditional use. So by dissolving that lot line, we now have these multiple buildings with multiple principal uses in them. So when Mr. Grosh comes through with his certified survey map, he will also be asking for a conditional use permit to allow the mixing of multiple principal uses, okay, just so that doesn't surprise you next month. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that when the Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit for the Daily Dose, they did say that the use should not be permitted to start occupancy until that dumpster is in place. So I just want to kind of reiterate that so everybody is on notice, and the applicant in particular. The proposed colors of the new building materials at the front and the street side of the building, the condition number 3 says that they must be consistent with the color image that's presented by the applicant in support of his materials. It's very much a cream colored proposition. And if you're comfortable with that, that would be the color we're asking him to be consistent with. And we would want final information about the color spec exactly and the material spec. There is a sign shown on the building plans. Condition number 4 says that the placement of any signs at the site would be subject to full compliance with Chapter 70, the sign code section of our village ordinance. Condition 5 talks about the proposed new deck with railing depicted on the second floor of the north building elevation. I don't see that we can permit that because that deck would extend out further than the lot line. It extends out from the building wall farther than the building wall sits from the lot line. So that would overhang above the neighboring property. I'm not aware that the village can approve it that way. If you have any reason to suggest that there's some ordinance or provision that airspace is allowed to be occupied, or if the village attorney has any information to that effect.
I do not.
Okay, then the village can't approve that balcony because it would overhang the neighbor's property. If he combines these two on the north side, he'll be fine. The same issue comes up with respect to a south side building addition. It appears that there's an addition on the south side of the building based on the plan. Is that an error in the plan? The reason I ask, though, is I'm looking at this.
Do you mind if I stay on? You might be addressing me and I just don't.
That's up to the village president.
Commission okay with him? Yes, come on up, Joe.
The existing window bay and then the building recess here, Joe, and then this is a revised window bay. There's 2 windows up there now. This would be a revision to those windows. Then there's a recess, then there are 2 windows here, and this is proposed to be revised to look like this. I don't know what I'm seeing over here, Joe. What am I seeing on the right-hand side of this drawing?
That is the existing rear entrance of the structure. We're not
So,
proposing any modifications to that besides siding, and then we're doing a metal roof.
when I look at this building from the street,
Or
I
Yeah, or
don't
maybe
see
I'm looking at the wrong
anything
thing.
sticking out to the right. I don't know why it shows up that way.
I think it's the way that the architect, the elevation is
Perspective,
coming
maybe.
from. It's almost like they're almost like laying it flat. It's a
Oh, I see, yeah.
wide
They're
view.
folding the plan out.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Just to be clear, there's no room for an addition along the south side of that building.
Yeah, they like opened it up.
Yeah.
It's an unusual
It's like-
plan view, I have to say.
It's like a globe laid down.
Yeah.
So, I jump back up to
That's true.
It is,
board.
which is probably why those windows look super narrow, because he folded it out.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about the colors, placement of signs, the elevation. On the north side, can't have the deck that overlaps the neighboring property to the north unless lots get combined. There's no south side addition, which is what I talked about in paragraph 6. Number 7, detailed plans, including a drawing of the proposed materials, colors, height, and door system of the dumpster enclosure, need to be submitted for review and approval by the village staff before the dumpster can be constructed. To the extent that the existing doorway and overhang eave is to be reconstructed on the southeast corner of the building, there's a small overhang there that appears to extend past the lot line already. If you're reconstructing it, I don't know that we can approve it to be put back in place extending over the lot line.
You referencing the garage?
No, I'm talking about,
Are you talking about that rear entrance?
first.
All we're doing to
this
that is
view.
just putting a different roof on it. We're not reconstructing. That helps.
This is the small roof that's back there now, okay? And that appears is very close to overhanging the lot line. And if you are proposing to reconstruct that roof,
I'm just putting a
new shingles,
just new shingles or just actually placing metal roofing right over the top of the shingles.
okay, so the structure's not being changed.
Correct.
Okay, then you're all right on that. This is killing me to move at this dinosaur's pace.
Would it be easier if we went through these one by one? I can discuss them as a board.
Well, I'm pretty close to finished. So
Okay.
I just wrap it up. Applicant to provide the building material samples in the proposed selection of colors for the review and approval by the planning commission before issuance of any building permits. You can defer that to staff, you have in the past. If you're comfortable with the general tone of things, I would recommend you would defer that to staff, but it's up to you. Number 11, the calculation has to be provided by the applicant as to compliance with the architectural materials requirements in terms of the masonry materials on the front facade of the building. And then also, condition number 12 talks about the planning commission making a determination about whether the existing overhead utility communications and transmission lines should be buried based on section 40.4275 of the village code.
That's been done.
That's all buried?
We did it voluntarily. It's all done.
I thought there was a new pole back there.
Oh, there's a pole on the south property line that would be servicing whoever owns that Heisey's property. But we had 3 poles removed and buried.
Very good.
Heads up, yeah.
So that is the extent of the conditions that I would be recommending you would consider attaching to any approval you might be willing to grant tonight.
We'd be able to go through these one by one and comment on them and discuss them and with the owner.
I wouldn't mind making a few comments, but I don't want to be out of order. So just when you're ready for me to speak, I'll.
President Knutson, can you?
Mary? On the east side, I believe it's the east side, where the old bank building used to be that got raised? South side, okay. That 30 feet, does that belong to you between that building and where the bank used to sit?
There's only about 1.5 feet from the, from our building to the lot line. We only have about 1.5 feet. There's another.
Yeah, but I've got this here, this is another lot that's showing on my,
It's not ours.
looks like there's a separate lot right here, which is 30 feet wide, it's showing.
They are 0.7 feet from the lot line on their building.
I think that corner property is combined 3 lots. 3 lots.
I think it's 90 feet.
Okay, so those all three together, no, two.
I wish we had it.
Okay, so it's the two.
You can buy it, Joe.
Get through this one.
Do we want to jump up to that first one?
Was I asked a question?
Oh, okay. Nope. We're gonna open this up, Jeff. We're gonna open it up to talk.
Yeah,
Okay, the applicant had wondered if you can make some statements. Is that acceptable, everyone?
did you have anything you want to comment on?
Just a couple comments, if that's okay. In regards to the building siding, this building's about, I think it's over 150 years old. I have records of this building going back from 1846. I don't know if those are real or not. But to put rigid siding on a structure like this is very difficult. We learned that when we resided the building just to the north of it. The buildings are wavy. You can't really straighten them up that well without a tremendous amount of work. So we want to keep the vinyl. There's vinyl siding on there now on both the south, north, and east elevation. So we're putting hardy plank and we're keeping the ephes and a lot of that high quality structure on the west side. But we want to maintain really what's there. So we're just going to go from a cream siding really to a more white. That's all we're doing. In fact, we're just changing the color. If we were to have to put a rigid siding board on there, it could potentially, from a cost standpoint, redoing the structure to make everything straight. Because when you put those siding boards on and you have a wavy side of the building, you're going to put it on, it just looks like so it would just make a big impact. We want to be able to keep the siding on the south, north, and east. I'm trying to think of what.
So you're just changing it on the front side?
Yeah, really the majority, well, the color is changing on those sides, but as far as the new facade is going on the west side. And that's really where we're putting all the money. Because eventually there's going to be a building that's going to be built on our south side. It just doesn't pay for us to put that tremendous amount of work. And then I think there's a few other comments, but I'd like to, if it's okay, just address them.
I guess we could go through.
I like the cream.
Go to one here. Okay, so the first thing is the railings. If you move it back a foot, is that a?
No. So
is there?
There's a reason why we did that.
Okay.
It wasn't just to. It was that there's an existing joint that's there, and if we cut it back, it's just going to look a little funny. Whereas if we could go that extra 8 inches. In the extra 8 inches out on there on that patio is nice, but not as much as just having it look nice and professional. But we just wanted to go to these. That was the thing.
And that's the one that's on an angle too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for the most
So all that's going away, and so it kind of pitches up a lot, and then there's an existing joint, and you'll see there, you'll be like, oh, that's why they did it that way. Because it just makes a sense, and we're totally comfortable with signing some kind of a release or hold harmless for that 8 inches or whatever it is, but it's just better for the project.
If they're willing to do it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll go through. we're moving way down there. So it makes sense. Attorney Blum and Leonardsinski, is there no issue? I mean, is the right of way hold harmless? Is that a pretty straightforward thing?
If there's going to be any improvement, put into our right-of-way, we just have an indemnity and hold harmless agreement that we would ask them to sign, so that if there's any liability that flows to the village as a result of their fence being within our right-of-way, that they protect us from that.
That's pretty straightforward. Okay.
Yeah.
The dumpster enclosure, I think gets resolved next month then, right? Colors we talked about. Signs. Oh, the deck and the railings there. Is those, so oftentimes we have, obviously we can't, I don't think we can allow the deck going over the property line, but we have, I think, made exceptions on occasions for fire, for secondary fire escapes. Is this kind of like is this more for a secondary access, or?
Are we talking about the
Oh, sorry,
possible deck on the north
Yeah.
side of the 115 building?
the north?
Front porch, I think, on the
That was just something to
north
be
building
cool
wall.
for
Okay.
whoever, for that apartment.
Oh,
To take advantage of the views, to just incorporate more of the street scene that's on the street. When we did Beachscape, that's one of the things that people love, is just going on their deck and being part of the street.
And it's only gonna be on the north,
Yeah, that's it. It was the only place where we could just put a little deck.
and that's gonna be, and then once that's combined, right, then that doesn't become an
Once
issue.
it's combined, it becomes,
Moot, right? Okay.
the only other comment I made with respect to that is, as long as fire department is satisfied with the separations of the buildings with that deck extension.
We could also hang it too. That might be, it would still, the lot line's gonna go away, but another thing we're looking to is, rather than putting structure, is just hanging it. Try to do like a 4 or 5 foot, because the building's gutted upstairs, so it's real easy for us to through bolt with some steel and just hang a structure rather than doing supporting post on.
To be, floating deck.
Yeah.
Staying over. Okay, so that was clarified with the 8,
Been on-
okay, I guess on 7, is everybody all right with the board? Allowing the board to review and approve materials,
Staff?
colors?
Staff.
Staff, sorry, thank you. Staff.
I have no problem. I hate to sound silly.
You want it blue?
No, not that I want it blue. It just, it currently, and maybe it's the stone, maybe it is the blue, maybe it's the variation of the multiple colors with the cream, the blue, and the stone, but it currently still feels like it really fits into the downtown when you get to the bistro and Sea Stirs and all of that. The proposed is very aesthetic, very surgical, very clean. It doesn't have that downtown feel for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the dark. To me, it's kind of odd.
It's very downtown adjacent to me.
It's just kind of missing that, as currently, you got the colors, you're kind of moving
Right.
forward.
I'm sailing off to the north end of the downtown. I thought about that same issue, and I reflected back on what we approved for the chiropractic down at the other end there. So the color scheme of this is kind of a bookend match on the other end of the street. This has a much different feel.
I hate to seem silly, I really do, and it's very aesthetic, it's very clean, it's very, maybe it's the new multiple windows, the darker colors or something, I don't know, I just think,
There's no blue in it.
I don't even care for blue, to be quite honest.
Just say it, there's no blue in it.
I don't know, but honestly, maybe it's the stone that I'm missing, just some color variation, it's just very clean, very surgical, in my opinion, but that's just me, I'm only one person.
And this whole front's, is it stucco?
That's stucco and some hardy board.
Okay.
outside.
And I think that, I personally think that the stucco is going to tie it in, just because it's hard to, obviously it's hard to see on a picture, but you
Right.
get, some of that texture from the stucco and then the black. I think it'll fit in personally, once it's there.
I mean, I like the style, I like everything else. I think adding the little porch, you've got the 2 entries. I'm very excited about it. It just kind of, as you scrolled, it kind of just caught me off guard.
The apartments are gone upstairs?
They're gutted. They're all 2x4s up there.
Okay.
But they're coming back,
They're
right?
coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, they're coming back. Oh, okay.
So with that said, would you want the applicant to come back with the, or
No,
are
I'm,
you all right with staff?
please, I'm not the color police or anything. I'm just making a general statement
Okay.
that it just is very, very, very surgical for me. So whatever everyone decides, I'm only one person, so.
Yeah. The doorway overhang, okay,
I
so
think we
that
took care of that.
existing doorway overhang eve, okay, that got resolved, because that's just the drawings, applicant drawing, okay. 10, applicant in green space, so is 10 moot now also, because there's no addition, it's gonna stay,
The,
just using a green space calculation?
the green space calc will have to be redone when the lots combine.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's just gonna get pushed down the road.
okay.
I mean, there is no green on this property. Is that anything that could potentially halt this process?
No, because right now, you're not proposing to change the impervious. So you're allowed to continue with the per-existing conditions, but you can't exacerbate the situation without approval by the planning commission through conditional use permit.
They just took the tree out for the image. They didn't cut it down. See, now with the tree there, it softens it up. All right. I think there's kind of, I made my way through there. Anyone else have comments or thoughts or anything?
I think it's a vast improvement to the building the way it looks now. I think having the decking out there in front, just, it does bring more to the building than the way it's designed now. I think the issues that they have, I think staff and the developer could work those out. I don't see any issues. Mark, you said that there could be something brought up between the village and the developer to allow the overlay of the building?
Encroachment into the right of way.
Oh, yeah, we can work that out.
Okay. So I can't see anything, as it's proposed, I don't see any issues in my eyes. I don't see any issues at all, and I think the color combination definitely is, I don't know, it just looks nicer, it looks more subtle than what's there now. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people that'll disagree, but, that's been, over the years I've lived here, that's been so many different colors and styles up on that building that, it's hard to imagine it any other way than the way it was. And I think the way you're doing it now, Joe, I think it's great. I think it looks great.
I think one of the real positive things for us is something that not all people are gonna see is getting rid of that exterior stair off the backside. Because we're doing an addition, we're bringing the structure's staying the same, but the upstairs is being built out, and that stair is going away, and we're putting that stairway internal with a nice entrance for the apartments. That's just gonna be a super big.
I think it's gonna, because right now it's the only thing on that corner, I think it's definitely gonna improve that sight line when people come into the village from that side of town. I think it's gonna add a little more flavor to it.
I have a parking question that, I'm sorry,
Sure.
just came up right there. So if you have apartments, do the apartments get to park in this parking lot? 1 through 7?
You know, we're gonna try to give them one space each. We also do have the two-car garage, where one of our fallback positions, depending on how the ratios work, is that we can take away the garage from the smaller building to the north and just have them park in between the garage and their building, and then have the garage that's there just dedicated solely for the building that we're discussing. So if you guys don't like me putting 2 dedicated spaces there, that would be our solution.
Well, when it was originally presented, we talked about how many spaces, and I thought they were providing 7 for the business, so then that's really not 7 for the business.
But that's what we'll do then. So that way it all works.
I do have one other question, and this is kind of both to Mary and Mark. He does have a lot behind his condominiums, which is, I believe, more than he's actually necessary for the condominiums.
Yeah, condominiums are parked adequately, and then the back lot is for overflow to the commercial uses on the first floor of the condo building.
So he could use part of that for this development, as saying that, I guess you'd have to sign an agreement with yourself to do that.
We could. We also have it's not inked yet, but Don, who owns the property behind us, is looking to let employee parking right directly behind us. Because that parking lot is probably used maybe 15%. So that was nice that he was able to do that. But that's not that could get sold, who knows? But that'll be nice just to free up the space from an employee standpoint.
The question on the last sentence there says current assessed value of improvements of the site 181,700. Is that the estimated increased value
No, it's the current value
of the whole
of the building.
of the building?
We just got reassessed, so that number might not be good because our numbers are taxed.
It might be about
Join
to
the
change,
club.
but that was last.
Yeah, that was the 23 assessment, so 24, it looks like it's a lot more.
It is.
Well, the board of review is coming up.
Yep.
Well, actually, if he went through there today, those taxes would go down, but then he's gonna have to go back once this work's all done. So I'm not even gonna.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I think I'll give it a try. Make a motion to approve with the planner's recommendations with the following changes. Under bullet point number 1, allowing the front raised concrete pad and railings with a hold harmless agreement. Under bullet point number 5, allowing the proposed deck, assuming that the properties are combined. Striking number 6, because that's just the one that's the item that was the confusion from the drawings. Striking number 8, because there's not going to be any reconstruction in that area. Bullet point number 9, allowing building materials, samples and colors for review at staff. And I think that was it. All the rest of the recommendations, all the rest of the recommendations included in the.
Their utilities are already buried, so 12.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And striking number 12.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everybody, I really appreciate it.
Item C, discussion and possible action on proposed development-wide swimming pool permissions and restrictions plan for the new 36-lot Riverside Preserve subdivision and R5 single-family residential with residential infill redevelopment overlay zone neighborhood located at the southwest corner of Bridgeway Drive and Riverside Drive. The applicant property owners MK/SSLC CO Mike and Jordan Carrick. Barry, I guess,
Yep, so the way the
More
overlay,
fun.
the infill redevelopment overlay district was written, we did put a provision in there that because there were going to be such small lots in those developments, the idea was that we would want to see a neighborhood-wide fencing restrictions plan so that we don't have a hodgepodge of different types of fences going up one next to the other throughout these small lot neighborhoods. And then we also said, we also feel like there should be a neighborhood-wide swimming pool restrictions plan. And the reason for that was, again, because of the small lot sizes and the fact that in this district, we allow a 10-foot side yard and a 0-foot side yard, okay? And what the code currently says about swimming pools is that they have to meet the side yard requirements for the principal, the same as the principal building. And I don't think we want swimming pools parked right up to within 0 feet of the side lot line. So oddly enough, the fencing restrictions plan does not require planning commission review and approval, but the swimming pool restrictions plan does, the way the code was written. I probably wouldn't have written it that way if I were doing it over today. I'd probably defer it to staff. But we are where we are. So I have talked with Mike Carrick and their attorney a number of times about this subject, and we got to what I think is a good spot on the fencing. With the swimming pools, I thought we had an agreement on how they were going to handle it, but the way the restrictive covenants were finally submitted to us, it doesn't reflect the language that I had recommended and thought they had agreed to. And I thought they would be here tonight too. But basically, the only concern I have is two things. What I'd like them to adjust is that the swimming pools not be allowed to be as close to the lot line as the setback or the offsets of the district, 0 and 10. I would rather that they be 15 feet off those side lot lines, period. I also think that the rear yard should be 20 feet for a swimming pool. And that any fencing that's required to be put in, because our code does require fencing around swimming pools, that any fencing that's required to put in for these swimming pools would be consistent with the approved fencing plan, which is a powder-coated black opaque type, or not opaque type fencing, an open fence. And you can see the image somewhere in the report, I think, for fencing. Right here. But so that's my suggestion. You see what they had written, and I had given this to them, and they had suggested that they were in agreement with it, that it would say no swimming pool or related equipment or utilities can be closer to the street than the principal building. No swimming pool can be closer than 15 feet to the side or rear lot lines, and not closer than 5 feet to any easement. Any fencing required to be put in has to match the fencing restrictions of the neighborhood. So because it says the Planning Commission has to approve this, we're going to push them off dead center and have you decide how you want to act on it tonight, whether you're satisfied with their language or whether you'd like to make the changes that I've proposed. Get back to them and let them know what they can record for restrictive covenants.
questions?
I have two questions.
Yes.
I haven't really studied every lot, but on the lots that are not adjacent to the Riverside Preserve, with your requirement, will they actually be able to build a pool? I mean, if you're 15 feet and 5, I mean, would a
Oh, yeah.
pool fit with the building? Okay,
It would fit, but it's going to be right smack in the middle of your yard.
okay. And then the ones that do, but the Riverside Preserve, it would be the same, even though there's a lot of green space behind them? It would still be the same 25 feet or 15 feet?
They would just not necessarily have it right in their backyard, in the
Okay.
middle of their backyard. They might have it further from the house.
Okay.
Because those, they could go that 5 feet from the easement then?
Yeah.
So Mary, you've got 421, you're adding the dark black to the swimming pool situation. Is that what I'm
Correct.
understanding?
What they came back with, and I honestly think it's an oversight, but I have to tell you that there have been so many email exchanges, and they just aren't getting it updated to reflect conversations we're having. But what this version of their language says is basically we defer to whatever the village's swimming pool regulations say. And we also don't want pop-up pools for longer than a certain period of time, which is fine. But 0 feet to one side is, in my opinion, that's too close.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be that close. And 15 feet to the other 3 lot lines is a reasonable figure. It's attainable on all of those lots. It just puts it in the middle of their backyard, but I think you have to be careful how tight you want these pools to be set up. Mike Carrick's opinion is that people aren't even going to think about putting pools in on these small lots. But it could happen, so we have to be prepared.
Does the concrete slab requirement still fit within the spaces? I mean, these are really small lots, so they would actually have to put a concrete slab in order to be able to put the above-ground swimming pool?
I think that's only for like an in-ground.
It says above-ground swimming pools are not permitted unless they are portable inflatable wading pools not to exceed 30-inch in depth and placed no more than 10 feet from the home on a concrete slab in the backyard in such a way not to disturb the quality of life of, so that would, I mean, that's a permanent structure. So we're talking about a non-permanent structure, but then we have to put in a permanent structure, and then does the permanent structure meet the requirements on some of these lots?
I didn't give that a ton of thought. I think it's reasonable. I think what they're trying to do is say it's going to have to be on your patio if you want to have it, because it can't be more than 10 feet from the house. So it's essentially going to be on a patio. If somebody wants to pour a new slab for it, they'll still have to, get the permit to pour that slab and meet the green space requirement on the lot if they're adding concrete.
Yeah, and looking at, it's basically their way of saying no AGPs.
No what?
AGPs, above ground pools.
Oh.
I think that's kind of there.
And I think in today's world, the portable and inflatable pools are most the way most everyone is going. Most of the people are putting them up before Memorial Day and taking them down after Labor Day.
Well, and this says they can only
Two
have.
consecutive weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if that's our normal,
Yeah.
that's already not being followed.
But this is
These are
for,
his prerogative, though. I mean,
These
if
is
he
for
wants to be
co-
that restrictive about.
Oh, these are for
pools.
just his
Those are his.
covenants.
yeah,
Gotcha.
you can still have your AGP anywhere you want it.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's where, when I read this before, I was trying to you usually think about your neighborhood and what you see in your communities and when you're driving around. So I got you. Thank you.
You're gonna have to pour a concrete slab, and you can only use the pool 2 weeks of the year.
I have everything else in
You
my
can still
driveway.
blow up your pool. You can blow up your pool next week before Memorial Day. You'll be all right.
So he's trying to be super restrictive, and we're gonna make it even more restrictive, a little bit.
Almost to encourage.
Cool.
No.
Are there any further questions or comments? Would someone like to, let's see, I think we're requiring a motion on this. Yes, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the planner's recommendations. I don't think we changed any of them.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Item 7, citizen comments. There's nobody here. So we're gonna go right to adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Grabowski second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone.